Hey, I'm Mike, and we have the final 6 competitors here of the high-speed 3D printer duct challenge, and we need to pick the winners. And to do it, I think we need to use a little bit more advanced testing techniques. So if you haven't caught any of the previous videos, I will link them up above there. Otherwise, let's get right into it. Based on the 4 previous torture tests, I have each duct currently ranked in this order. First, the sweeper by Dizzle. This one has 153 points. Need It Make It's turret with 144 points. The cuttlefish by Moby Obi next with 142 points. And then I have a tie between Ducty McDuckface and Hurricane Quadro with 129 points. Then I have the Loop X by 10101, just barely behind those with 127 points. Now for reference, the stock duct came in at 96 points, so each of these ducts came in quite a bit better overall than the stock duct. What we need now are some tests that actually show the true cooling capability of each duct, and to do this, what I've done is created a very fast print in VOS mode. It is extremely small and quite tall. I've also increased the extrusion line width by 0.3 millimeters, bringing it to around 0.7 millimeters, which will make it harder to cool as well. Now, if they can't cool it well enough, the part and the previous layer will wobble and we'll begin to see some defects appear. And I'll be using my P2 thermal camera attached to my phone, and we can measure the max and minimum temperatures, and we'll also have the exact moment to take the measurement to when that print has finished. ThermalMaster has also been good enough to provide a brand new one of these, and that will be one of the top prizes for this competition. The sweeper came in on average at 34.4 Celsius with a maximum temperature of 38.3 and a minimum of 32.8. The turret came in at an average of 38 Celsius with a max of 42.5 and a minimum of 35.8. The cuttlefish came in on average 35.7 with a max 41.6 and a minimum 33.4. Ducty McDuckface came in average of 38 with a maximum of 44.3 and a minimum of 35.7. Hurricane Quadro averaged 36.7 with a max 42.5 and minimum 35.8. And Loop X averaged 36.8 with a max of 43 and a minimum of 33.9. I've given each of these ducts a percentage compared to the best performer, which was the sweeper in this test. And if we look at the results, the sweeper had one of the cleanest prints as well. The last test that I'd like to do is a total volume test. And I have to admit that I don't have a great way to actually test this. So what I have here is the Bichu Universal CPAP fan. Now the output on this fan is actually quite a bit more than the one from the T1 printer. It's about twice as much. So what I'll do is just put this about halfway, and I'll test it open just like this first, just so we have a bit of a benchmark, and I'll be using the good old garbage bag. Now one of these designs will not probably perform as well as it could because it uses the air amplification technology, just like a Dyson fan, and this aerofoil to induce air in from behind. Some of the other ones will do the same, but not to the same extent that this one will. And of course, we're going to be having it inside of a bag. We can't take advantage of adding that additional air from around it. So I'm going to fill up this bag and time it, see how long it takes to just get to the point where it is starting to pressurize this bag, and then I'll do the exact same thing for the other ducts. All right. 19 seconds. For the volume test, I had the cuttlefish coming in at the top at 93%. Then I had the sweeper at 92.6%. I had then the Loop X at 91%. Ducty McDuckface at 90%. Hurricane Quadro at 77%. And then I had the turret at a pretty low 68%. I had actually planned on using SimScale as well to see what's happening a little bit better, but some of the ducts do not agree with SimScale, and there are some errors, and there doesn't seem to be any way for me to fix them. Next, what I'm going to do is run the fan at 90% just in this setup. I'm going to see how much air is actually coming against the stock nozzle and then get the average of that number. And then I'm going to replace that stock nozzle, which is brass, with this much longer brass nozzle, which will come down further. And then we'll be able to get a comparison of how much the heater needs to work based off of the stock nozzle versus how much it needs to work based off of this one that comes down further. And the bigger the difference theoretically between them, the more air there is below the nozzle and the less air there is actually directed at the nozzle itself. Okay, so this duct came in at 56% with the stock nozzle. I'm going to swap out the nozzle right now for the longer version, and we'll do the exact same test again. We'll get the average, and then I'll do the same for the rest of the ducts as well. The biggest difference that I saw was with Ducty McDuckface at 18%, then I had the Sweeper at 15%, Cuttlefish at 14%, Hurricane Quadro at 11%, the Turret also at 11%, and then Lupex only at 5%, which is a little bit strange, so I retested it, and again, it was 5%. Now, I didn't include these in the rankings because it's kind of an unknown at this point how important this is. So there is a pretty clear winner, and that is Andizzle's the Sweeper. I had this duct at a 92% overall rating. It is also the quietest duct, and most importantly, it performed the best on the Torture Cooling Tower. Second place, and also pretty clearly, is Moby Obi's Cuttlefish, coming in at 87.2% total rating. It performed quite well on most tests, though it was actually one of the loudest ducts in these 6. I've removed myself from the competition. So now we have a bit of a problem. We have a very close call between Ducty McDuckface, and it is just barely above the Loop X, and I'm tempted to give Ducty McDuckface a few more points because it will induce more air and should come in higher on the volume test, but I think it's better if I just ask you for your help to decide. So in the comments down there, I've added both of these ducts. Please let me know with a thumbs up which one you think performed the best. And I'm also going to have a link for some really high quality photos for each of these ducts so that you can compare them yourself to see which one actually performed the best in your eyes. Now, I just want to mention this is purely based on performance and is not to do with looks or anything else. So the dual opposing or dual angle design seemed to perform the best in the test setups, at least that I performed. And that fast moving air really close to the nozzle, using as much of the supply air is also important, but also having a place for the warmed air to easily escape is also pretty important. The full surround designs tend to block some of the air from escaping, but this design might be the exception, and I believe that it is in part because it amplifies the air, but also near the nozzle and the heater it becomes quite thin, giving it a place for the air to escape fairly easily. Now the air around this one can also go up, and I felt that when I put my hand in around the printer as well, and definitely a lot of air coming down below. Now this one, the Loop X by 10101, actually performed much better than I expected. It's a little bit of an enigma to me. It has some similarities to this design in that it is kind of like a full surround, or at least somewhere in between, but it is also a little bit like this one, the Hurricane Quadro. I'm starting to get some submissions already for the next season, but please hold off for now. We need to make some changes to the printer first. The fan is undersized for the speeds and accelerations of this printer, so I would like to install BChu's universal CPAP fan. I would also like to install it midway up on the printer, and that would allow us to shorten the hose. I'd also like to give it a larger diameter hose, and I'd also like to have it done from silicone rather than this corrugated material. Now also just as important is the effector cover, and there are some strange decisions that have been made on the inside here. We have a very small tube which is restricting some of the flow, and what surprised me the most was this little tiny cutout. This takes some of that fan supply air and sends it to the heatsink. The funny part is that the pipe itself actually blocks the heatsink fan, so I don't exactly know why any of this was done. I think all of this needs to be redesigned to allow as much of the fan supply air to get to the duct with the least amount of restriction. And of course we have a noisy fan as well, so we need to address all of those things before the next competition, and I will provide you with a new template as well. After you give me a hand with third place, I will make an announcement, and then for the winners I have a lot of prizes, but I have something extra special that no other channel or even no other competition has done before, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe and notify so you don't miss it. And as always, thank you to each of my patrons for helping to make these videos possible. I really appreciate it. If you want to help support this channel in a different way and you're looking for good 3D printing products, I have a very short list of quality products that I use in my shop that I know perform, and that is listed down there below in the description. Take care, and we will see you on the next one.